Hello, good morning. Today there are some things I wanted to get off my chest, and I don't know. I've been feeling like I've been having, like little improvements, little revelations lately, and there's going to be a lot of like little, pockets of talking that I want to go through everything because I feel like I need to get it out there because basically what has happened, in three different situations in the past 2 days that I had been faced with, people who don't really, how do I put it? It's the whole thing of like love you, but like you being this way is wrong, that type of thing. And I don't know, like I think that I'm dealing with it much better than I would, in the past. I think that I would have kind of like rejected the people, and just trying to kind of like move on. Although in some cases it's family, so it's like you can't really fully move on from that. But it is one of those things that I think I'm doing much better. But at the same time, it kind of like takes a toll on me, and I have to acknowledge that this is the type of thing that before I will really be able to acknowledge. I want to just project this strength and this like I don't care. And the truth is that I do care, and there's nothing wrong with caring. It's just that it's vulnerable, being in that position and having to acknowledge those feelings because I don't know. I think in some cases we kind of like reached an impasse because like there's not going to be any change, and I really wish there was, but I've kind of like come to accept that this is always going to be the reality of my situation. And I will say, like, all things considered, I'm doing pretty well in terms of like, yeah, people kind of like trying to well, I think that they aren't try to impose like violently or aggressively. But I think sometimes people they try to make two situations be equal, and it's not the same. Like you discriminating against a person, even if like you say you still love them, like in their situation brings you pain, like that is not your life. Like fuck you. Actually, I didn't say that, but it is part of like what I wanted to say. Like you cannot really equalize these two situations, one of you kind of like partially rejecting a person, and then you're being sad because the person is the way that they are. So like that is something that I was talking to my aunt yesterday, and we had a long interesting conversation. And I will say that like that was a good example of like me being able to kind of like remove myself from the situation as it is happening, and as a consequence I was able to kind of like maintain the peace. But it was hard. Like I want I don't want that. I don't. I want I think we all want to be accepted, but as I said, like I'm at this point where I'm like, I don't know if this is ever happening, and like and also like as far as like things go, like this is a pretty comfortable situation. So like everybody is at impasse, but I wish there was a way for me to just make people understand that it is not the same. That like you're feeling pain, but like my pain comes from you rejecting me. Your pain comes from like you having a notion of how you want people to be, and then not being that way. It's like it's not the same, and yeah, and you're kind of like placing a very heavy weight on me, not only on me, because I am just one person that's a part of like a group. So like you're placing it on everybody, but like this is the one I'm dealing with. So yeah, so that was the situations that happened. So it was three different instances, and as I said, I'm dealing with it better, but it still hurts. And I think that's pretty much what I want. I want to acknowledge that it hurts, and that this makes me weak. So be it. I just want to. I don't want this weight. I don't want. Which is why like there are so many things we don't talk about often because like they lead to these revelations. They are pretty heavy and very uncomfortable. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. The second thing I wanted to highlight is that basically I'm being kind of like coming to accept that there have been situations in the past where I've been rather passive, where I wanted to be kind of like more. I think that ultimately the goal is, for it to be assertive, right? There is like assertiveness, passiveness, passive aggression, and aggression. Aggressiveness, not a word, but none of those four, being assertive, like that is the way to go. That is the one that you should aspire to, and that is the one that I do aspire to for the most part. But there have been times where just being assertive has made me feel weak. So I kind of like what I want is aggression, like being aggressive. That to me, when like I had this more toxic mindset, like that was the way to go. And I think that a lot of people, they go through this as well, where they mistake aggression for strength, and like imposing yourself, and that is not really the case. So but I think that I would like, so assertiveness is like the right way, and the other three, like they're not particularly great, they're toxic. You should change, you should your life is going to be better when you do. But out of the three of them, aggression, being aggressive, like that is the one that to me it felt like the most, not necessarily correct as in like morally correct, but the one that projected what I wanted to the most. I wanted to be strong, I didn't want to be weak, I didn't want to be vulnerable. So like being aggressive was kind of like the way to go. And in some cases, like being, as I mentioned, being assertive didn't feel as if like that was the way to go. I felt like I had to be a little bit more imposing. And like right now I'm at a place where I'm like, what, I don't want to be aggressive. That is not healthy, that is not the right way to go about things. And it's not like the way that because not only like in the moment, but like afterwards, that is a situation where if you kind of like, usually you're going to regret the things that you said and did. Also, like that behaving that way, it just showcases that you're not in a healthy place, that you're not like a well-rounded person, like full-fledged adult, productive member of society, however you want to put it. So there is the case. There's a case to be made that I shouldn't, because sometimes I kind of like realize that I still want to be aggressive, and I think there's a matter of habit, that has been kind of like one of my go-to ways for a long time. So like that is pretty much what feels comfortable and right, because a lot of things can feel right, even though they're not, because I've a habit, you behave in a certain way, and that is like the way that you've kind of like managed to feel you've managed to just feel like good about yourself in that way by responding to the situation. But thankfully I'm not there anymore. I'm not in this having this particular mindset, but still it is sometimes, I think, when you're more exposed, you may kind of like revert to like that way of being. And as I said, I think this past couple of days have been a good example of me kind of like not being like that. So things are looking out for me, and I want more of this. I want to have more of these moments, even if like by being assertive, like they make me feel like, because I think like if you're angry and you say something, like you're getting it out of your chest and you're making it somebody else's problem, and that's sometimes like what you want. Like person imposes on you, or does something that harms you, or that makes you uncomfortable. You want to kind of like give that back, that feeling. You want to make a person feel the same way. And if you're being kind of like aggressive, as I said, like that is like you might feel like better about that when it's happening, which is why I think that was a bit of a challenge for me for the longest time, because I was like, this is not the way to be. But at the same time, like it feels good when I'm doing this, and when I don't do anything, it doesn't feel right. Or when I do something, like I talk about it, like I'm more assertive, like it also, like if it feels that you're letting somebody go off lightly, and that doesn't feel good. That particularly when you're hurt. So I think that what I want from myself and from me with other people, with the world, is to kind of I wanna I don't want to go and be passive. I want to be heard, so I want to kind of say it. But there's a way of like doing things that kind of like maintains good relationship with people, and that's something that I used to like not care. I had this very traumatized attitude where it was like, is it my way or highway, in the sense that like you either are with me or you're against me. There was no in between, and that was not healthy. That was not good for me. But it was a defense mechanism, basically. It was a way for me to protect myself. So what I have to do now is to just make sure that I'm not vulnerable like that, in terms of I don't have any triggers, because otherwise I'm going to always revert to like my old self. I mean, of course there is the element of like self-control, but I think that like if you are too traumatized, there are too many triggers, like it's kind of like harder for for you to move on, for you to just exist, because like everywhere you go there's like a threat, and that's not really the case. The other thing I want to talk about regarding like this way of handling things is that I kind of like have to accept that at some points in my life I was passive or passive aggressive. Like that is 100% something that happened, and I didn't want to acknowledge this for the longest time because it made me feel weak. it put me in a vulnerable position because I really needed myself to be a certain way, and it wasn't going to happen like that. Like it wasn't really. And like if I'm not really advocating for myself, basically, I'm kind of being buried under the weight of like of the world, the way of like everything I want to do, what I am, or like who I wanted to be, all those things. So I'm acknowledging that there have been times where I was passive aggressive, and it feels good to be able to admit these things because for so long I was trying to keep a pretense in my head, and that kind of like prevented me from from growing, because for me to like no longer have those behaviors, those approaches to situations, I had to first acknowledge that there was a presence of that. So like that was the case, and as I said, being passive and passive aggressive, like that was almost like a scene to me. Like that was, I think that's an interesting conversation to have, like because I grew up in a religious environment, so there's the notion of sin, and what it means different things. And it's interesting because there's so many things that they kind of like had that way, me. Yeah, they had like that way of like they felt sinful. They were not. There's like nothing necessarily morally wrong, but I think that was the way that I could process things because I grew up in that environment. That was an easy way for me to feel about things, and it's kind of like comparable because, as I said, being passive isn't crime isn't inherently a bad. I mean, it is kind of like inherently. It can be inherently a bad thing. Like you should kind of like assert yourself. And if you don't, it might lead to you getting sick, like in your head, even like physically, if you're not, like advocating for yourself and getting, like and handling situations well. But basically what I'm trying to say is that for me, like there were certain behaviors that they were kind of like comparable with sins because of like how much I rejected them and I didn't want that to be me. So there is, like that situation. So as I said, like being weak and like my definition of weak when I was younger, I mean, it's nothing like unique. I think a lot of people feel the same way, or at least like that is my interpretation, looking at people and seeing how they behave. I'm like, okay, you used to think just like me, or in this case, like you're thinking just like I used to think, and that is not healthy because it kind of like it sets out this traps for you throughout life. It makes things like unnecessarily harder. If you're like looking trying to be something, trying to at least, or at the very least, like be perceived as something, and like there's like the very frail image that's kind of like glass, so like any rock they can throw make it break it. So you're very vulnerable. You're more vulnerable than you need to be. So like that is an interesting thing because right now that I'm being more open and committing the sins, like my life is better. Like I'm handling things much more efficiently, and also like in a better way, in a way that is healthier for me, in a way that doesn't bring unnecessary distress. So like that is important. That is something that is worth talking about, because as I said, like I wasted so many years being so skittish, about so many different things, and like right now I just want to be happy. As I said, I want to be contented, and also like today, like I'm in a really good place mentally. These past 2 days I have been where like I want to write, I want to work on my novel, I want to improve myself. I want to live a good life, and I want to live, like that is very important. I want to exist, and I'm trying, like things are falling into place. I've come to accept and to be grateful with the fact that my writing is very important, and that it in itself can kind of like make me feel fulfilled with my life. Of course that I want more anchors, more things to keep me going, but like just having that one, like I'm back on track. It feels like that I am. Yeah, so like it's an effort. I want to finish this novel, and that's going to take time, and it's going to take dedication, but it's going to be worth it in the end. The other day I was thinking, the other day, not like yesterday, I was thinking about seeing, because my parents, they have my books displayed on the little like living room. There's like a little coffee table, and there's like a label necklace and a little magnifying glass, and it's on top of the books. So sometimes I like to go there and just go through the pages and be like, I did this, like it makes me very proud of myself, and it makes like life worth living, like that feeling of yeah, like that feeling. Naturally, as I said, like I want other things from life, but just having something that makes me so happy. It just feels, I don't know, it feels like these days, just my writing is enough to kind of like keep me going. And yeah, so I said I had multiple things I wanted to talk about, but I kind of like I'd forgotten the other ones. I had like some other revelations, but life is good, basically is what I'm trying to say. I feel happy and I feel contented, and everything feels amazing right now, except for, like, as I said, these little moments that I had where like I was exposed to some bullshit. And as I said, like, this is always going to happen, so it's good that like it's not affecting me as much, even if like it does make me sad, because like every time somebody says something to me about that, and I can't be destabilized like that, because like it's just a lot. I don't want people's ignorance, and to honestly, sometimes not ignorance, they just are set on their ways, and it is what it is. But I'm very fortunate that because there's like all types of rejection that involves people disowning their relatives, disowning like the person in question, and that's not really the case for me. We're very I know I'm loved and I'm wanted, and that in itself is kind of big deal. Because as I said, like, if I had the rejection, I was talking to my parents, I was like, if they didn't really love and support me, I don't know if I want to keep going. So I'm very fortunate. Things could have been worse, basically. I don't usually like to have this comparison, because things could be worse, but it could also be better. Like, each their own struggles, but what I mean, like, I don't want to minimize things, because that also leads to a certain dissatisfaction with your life, because like, if you don't process the loss and those negative feelings, they're going to fester. They're going to poison other areas of your life. So I want to acknowledge that those things, they make me sad, but and they make me uncomfortable, but I still want to keep living. It's not, we're not really threatening to remove my will to live, which is huge for me, great improvement. And yeah, it is what it is. Like, if I cannot find this type of peace that I'm looking for, with my family, with close family, friends, and all that, I can find it somewhere else, which kind of like highlights the fact that I need to be I want to interact more with people. I had been inserting myself in situations where, yeah, like situations where I'm exposed to more people, and I mean, most of the interactions they have, they're not going to lead to like a fruitful relationship, and that's okay. I'm out there looking for my people. I already have some people there, like my people, but I'm, yeah, like, I guess, like, I want more, or at least I want something deeper, and of course, like, that is entirely up to me, and I make more of an effort. I'm not just like leaving it to chance. I'm actually I'm putting myself out there, which sometimes, which is a good beginning. Maybe like I need to do more, but I'm already doing more than I used to, so just I can take it like one day at a time, one step at a time, and all's good. Like, things are going to sort themselves out in the end, basically. Not because there is like any external forces making things, just that, because that is something that people they talking about, be talking to religious people. Like, most people in my life are religious, and like, I'm not, and also like I'm not a believer. So for me, things just kind of like happen, and that is something that some people have like a really hard time grasping, that things just happen. They had to believe that there is a point to things, and that there is meaning to the way that things happen, and basically. And I mean, like, sure, I nothing wrong with that. I mean, as I said, like, as long as you're not, making this somebody else's problem, and you're not really, like, imposing and harming other people, imposing on and harming other people. But it's just like, I don't know, it just doesn't. As I said, like, I'm not a believer, like, in all in religious things. Usually, I don't believe in people or institutions or ideas, ideologies, and I don't know. I think that's what makes the most sense to me. And it's not that I'm like trying to think this way. It's just like the way my brain works. And like, as I said, other people think about things differently, as long as you're not harming other people in the process of like believing that way. I know you do you, because ultimately life is supposed to be lived, and I'm living it my way, and other people are living it their way. And you know, like, I don't like for people to kind of like pressure themselves and feel, you know, guilt over, because you know, like, there's a lot of like these ideas, like they ended up leading to, for example, you know, like a person who like is not, things are not really flowing very well for them. They will just, you know, kind of think that, you know, like it's their fault that things aren't flowing, things aren't happening. So I don't like that. I don't like when that is pretty much what that leads to, because you know, like, there's so many circumstances, there's so many things that happen that I don't know. As I said, like, I've been having these conversations. I'm glad that like I'm able to, you know, like, just process it and remove it from my mind so it doesn't bother me. But that is hard, you know, like, that is something that I struggle with for so long, and there is nothing. I don't know. I guess there's no right or wrong way of going about things, but you know, sometimes people impose certain ideas on themselves, and then they feel bad because of it. You know, because they're not really fitting into like that mold where things aren't really happening the way they are like supposed to happen. And yeah, so I don't really like that.